Dulce, the secret alien base. Some people often look at the evolutionary metamorphosis of the human being with fright and fear. An example of this is the conspiracy theory linked to the town of Dulce, where for years in this small rural community there have been strange stories relating to an underground base that would be located under the rocky mountain chain of Archuleta Mesa. Cattle mutilations, strange lights in the sky, alien abductions. The echo of these facts, narrated by multiple witnesses, has often polarized the interest of paranormal enthusiasts in this location, and New Mexico has undoubtedly become a land of intricate enigmas, especially regarding phenomena such as extraterrestrial activity. Complicit in this reality are not only the vast number of sightings of unidentified flying objects, but above all the massive presence of military bases that are mainly dedicated to the development of aeronautical technology. In these bases, the American Army would in fact have given birth, over time, to new futuristic weapons developed through the use of secret technologies, immensely more modern and powerful than conventional civilian technologies. Just think of the Lockheed SR-71, better known as the Blackbird, a hypermodern reconnaissance aircraft secretly designed and tested between the end of the 50s and the beginning of the 60s, precisely in this area. There is no doubt that an aircraft of this kind, in times so distant from today, could have been mistaken for an unidentified flying object by any witnesses who in those years could have possessed a minimal and limited knowledge of aviation engineering. But the controversial and sometimes grim stories of the town of Dulce also make one suspect that a cooperation is taking place, a cooperation that goes beyond what can be considered rationally understandable. In just 20 years, the American aviation industry has been able to evolve thanks to the full development of propulsion engine technology. Starting from the components of the German Messerschmitt Me-262 fighter bomber, an aircraft capable of instilling terror in the Allied air flotillas during the last phase of the Second World War. In the development of such weapons, the ufological community has always asked a specific question, namely, how was it possible to make this technical leap in such a short time? Among the possible answers to the question, reverse engineering has been repeatedly brought into question, as is suspected in the case of Roswell. However, to continue this discussion, we need to make several leaps into the past. These stories, which in the eyes of many may seem pure science fiction, have their roots in a much more remote period than the events relating to the Roswell incident. Already in the 1930s, stories were circulating about the imaginary crashes of strange flying machines, which, following rapid inspections by military personnel, were transported to secret bases by governments to be studied and in some way reproduced. A case in point is the story concerning the UFO crash of Vergiate, which took place in Italy in 1933, during the dictatorship of Benito Mussolini. On the morning of June 13, 1933, an unidentified flying object appeared in the skies over Lombardy, a region of northern Italy, and the nation's productive and economic hub. The aircraft crashed in an isolated field near the small town of Vergiate, in the province of Varese. It was immediately identified by the local security authorities, who took action by sending a special team to the location. The object in question could have been a new prototype of a foreign aircraft that was circulating without authorization in the skies of the Kingdom of Italy. However, when the men arrived at the crash site, amazed and perplexed, they found themselves faced with something never seen before. The aircraft did not seem to have been produced with the technical knowledge of the period. It had no wings and was made of a seemingly contiguous metallic material forged from a single plate, completely devoid of screws, bolts or welds, a shocking detail given that the object was the size of an automobile. About 10 meters away, the bodies of two humanoids were found, almost 2 meters tall, with milky white skin and thick blonde hair, creatures that looked more like the gods of Norse mythology rather than the modern figures of aliens with large heads and grey complexions. According to rumours, the remains of the mysterious aircraft were transported via trucks to the Savoia Marchetti plant, one of the main aeronautical companies of the time. However, there is no report relating to where the two extraterrestrials were transported, even if some ufologists hypothesize that the corpses were immersed in tanks of formaldehyde in order to preserve them. Then they were transported to Rome to be shown to Mussolini. As soon as Benito Mussolini was informed of the facts, he ordered utmost secrecy to be maintained about the incident, though the dictator did not believe at all in the extraterrestrial nature of the incident. However, in the days following the event, no one actually managed to explain the existence of such technology, and Mussolini then authorized investigations on the aircraft to be conducted by the RS-33 cabinet of Ovra, the secret police of fascist Italy. Coordination of the RS-33 cabinet was given to Guglielmo Marconi, Nobel Prize winner for physics, thanks to the invention of the wireless telegraph and for his studies on radio waves, which in the years to come would lead to the invention and production of radios and televisions. Marconi was later joined by two other physicists, Enrico Fermi, the inventor of the first nuclear reactor, and Ettore Majorana, a young physics genius who mysteriously disappeared in 1938 at the young age of 32. During the Second World War, the files relating to the research conducted by the RS-33 cabinet would also have been accessible to the German authorities. On the basis of these documents, the development of the Wunderwaffen began, secret experimental weapons, including the V-7 aircraft, very similar to flying saucers, as well as the legendary Die Glocke, a bell-shaped armoured device that moved through the air without the use of thrusters, but thanks to the use of magnetic fields. Finally, at the end of the war, the United States and the Soviet Union would have come into possession of all of the documentation on these unconventional thrusters, based on reverse engineering, that is, the analysis carried out starting from the decomposition or disassembly of an artifact or object that is found. The cabinet, whose meetings were attended by senators and scientists, was the Italian version of Majestic 12, the secret US organization that would have been set up in 1947 to investigate the Roswell incident. At the end of the Second World War, Verjate's UFO was made to disappear, and according to some supporters of theories in this regard, it may also have been transported to a secret base of the American government, perhaps right in the very famous Area 51. But just as it is suspected that a real existing base may possess extraterrestrial artifacts, it is also believed that apparently peaceful places without military bases possess them underground. The existence of the Dulce Base, in fact, is only a supposition, but it still remains an object of interest today. There are no documents, photographs, or citations about the site from the United States Army. But according to some ufologists, the base would be a secret military center for the study of alien species, new stealth aircraft, and innovative weapons. Connected via a main tunnel to the military base of Los Alamos, a point from which many other underground routes would wind their way out with the aim of connecting the numerous secret installations on North American territory, this immense structure would have the purpose of hiding a cooperation between the government of the United States and some extraterrestrial species on our planet. There would, therefore, be a military alien cooperation, from which the United States would derive a profitable advantage in the technological and medical fields. In the light of these hypotheses, it was then theorized that in Dulce in 1966, a pact was stipulated between the generals of the United States Air Force and the alien contingents. This alleged pact, called the Plato Act, would be in some way linked to the increasing cases of animal mutilation in New Mexico and alleged alien abductions in the United States. Dulce is a small town, born at the end of the 19th century, when the United States government ordered an Apache tribe to settle in those natural places that would later become part of the Jicarilla Reservation. Its few inhabitants lived in peace for many years, although the region had always been subject to unexplained and characteristic phenomena, such as the continuous sightings of lights in the night sky and the legends of the natives about strange beings that roamed around the mesa. For 100 years and more, these stories survived, nothing more than simple camping tales, perfect for spending a night around the fire and jumping in fright at the slightest rustle of wind. However, starting from the end of the 70s, sinister and inexplicable phenomena would begin to occur with exponential frequency in Dulce, quickly making this remote town the epicenter of one of the greatest conspiracy theories of the last century. It all started one morning when a farmer went to check on his herd of cows in the enclosure where they were grazing. Among the many cattle, there was one lying lifeless on the ground. The farmer approached it to understand what had happened, but nothing could have prepared him for that bone-chilling vision. One of the animals was lying on its side. It had clean cuts in the flesh on its muzzle and along its body, as if made with a scalpel. Its sensory and sexual organs appeared to have been surgically removed, while the internal organs had disappeared, as if sucked away by something, leaving an empty carcass. The farmer was immediately convinced that it couldn't have been an attack by another animal, since no predator would have been able to reduce the beast to that state, above all without leaving the slightest trace. The farm owner decided to contact the Rio Arriba County Police, who at first were not interested in the case, but following this first report, other farmers in the following weeks also reported several and multiple mutilations of animals. All had the same characteristics. They all had clean cuts, the exportation of internal organs, and no trace of predators on the ground. The terrified citizens of Dulce began to wonder who or what was behind these brutal acts. After some time, the local police finally decided to investigate the phenomenon. The task was assigned to the officer Gabriel Valdez, convinced that behind those events there was no monster, but simply a maniac or a person determined to create panic among the local population. But when the officer went to some of the affected farms, seeing the state of the bodies of the mutilated animals, he immediately understood that something inexplicable was happening. The bodies didn't just seem to have been surgically operated on. The corpses were completely bled out, but there were no traces of blood on the ground. The earth around the animal was slightly burned, but the strangest discovery concerned the only bruises that the carcasses had. After careful analysis, they did not appear to have been caused by an ambush predator, such as a coyote or a puma, but by a fall from a height of around 50 feet. Agent Valdez even went so far as to claim that he had found inside one of the carcasses the body of a small hybrid being, who, according to his testimony, had human, bovine and reptilian physical characteristics. Dismayed and faced with these incredible statements, his police station colleagues just thought that Valdez was letting himself be influenced more and more by the old legends of the natives, and the terrifying details he described appeared in the eyes of the most skeptic as pure invention, caused by a mind that was gradually losing touch with reality. Soon, however, the case escalated, and for the first time there was talk of alien involvement. Everything changed when, in the middle of the night, a young engaged couple showed up at the police station saying they had narrowly escaped an alien abduction. It was midnight, and young Jerry Julian and her boyfriend had stopped to look at the stars along a highway near the Mesa. They noticed a celestial body moving rapidly across the sky, which then began approaching them. As the object got closer, however, they realized that it was not a sphere of light, but an aircraft very similar to one of the flying saucers that could be seen in science fiction films. The object landed not far from their car, and two small grey aliens with large heads came out of it. The couple watched them with fear, but when the grey beings noticed them, they began to move quickly towards them. The couple jumped into their car and drove away before they could be reached. Back home, they couldn't believe what they had just seen, and for the first time, Jerry Julian understood that the legends her Native American grandmother used to tell her as a child were in fact reality. Those beings who came down from the sky and who had taken refuge in the Mesa for millennia, hiding most of the time from human eyes, really existed. Jerry and her boyfriend were not the only ones who in those years reported strange events in the direct vicinity of Archuleta Mesa. Thus, among the approximately 3,000 inhabitants of the community, the belief that something even more mysterious was hidden under their feet began to spread like wildfire. Many of them even went so far as to declare that they had heard metallic noises coming from underground in the area, as if gigantic machines were working, causing strong earthquake-like tremors to the ground when they were activated. Following these initial developments of the story, a key character who tried to fully understand what was happening in the area undoubtedly became Paul Bennewitz, an Arizona businessman who in the early 80s was the spokesman for the theory regarding a secret base in Dulce. During the 1970s, Bennewitz became a member of Arizona's Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, or APRO, a civilian UFO investigative group, and was particularly interested in livestock mutilation. On April the 20th, 1979, the man attended a public meeting on the subject, organized by United States Attorney Robert Thompson and United States Senator Harrison Schmitt. At the meeting, Bennewitz met Officer Gabriel Valdez, and he spoke for the first time about the mysterious events that were taking place around the town of Dulce. After this brief chat, Bennewitz was so struck by Valdez's statements that he decided to start a self-financed study on the various phenomena that repeatedly occurred, after days or weeks, terrorizing the population. At first, he decided to focus his research on the nearby Kirtland Air Force Base, and Bennewitz reportedly began filming strange lights near the buildings and recording unusual radio signals. He also tried to get in contact with the press office of the base, but was totally ignored. Later, the researcher began to publish his first articles, in which he claimed that under the Archuleta Mesa, some kind of secret structure was hidden and that the military was directly responsible for it. But when, on May 6, 1980, the state police in Cimarron, New Mexico, received a report from a woman calling herself by the fictitious name of Myrna Hansen, things took an unexpected turn. Myrna told a story that contained all the elements Bennewitz was looking for: interplanetary visitors, lights in the sky, and above all, bovine mutilations. So, not having a clue how to help her, the Cimarron police handed the case directly to Valdez, who at the time was nicknamed the Cattle Mutilation Guy. Valdez, in turn, contacted Paul Bennewitz, who immediately took measures to speak personally with Mrs. Hansen. On May the 7th, the woman, together with her son, went to Albuquerque to meet Bennewitz, and there they told him in detail what they remembered about the evening of May the 5th, 1980. Myrna Hansen was driving near Eagle Nest, New Mexico, when she and her son, who witnessed that event, saw two huge silent objects the size of airships hovering in the sky. White light blinded them, and from that moment the two underwent an episode of missing time and lost part of their memories of what happened. At this point, Leo Sprinkle was called, a psychologist and tenured professor at the University of Wyoming, who in the past had investigated reports of UFO contact, also using the technique of regressive hypnosis, a pseudoscience which, according to its supporters, is able to bring back the submerged memories of the abductees. Benowitz arranged for Sprinkle to fly to Albuquerque to hypnotize Hansen, and when the psychologist arrived, Hansen and Benowitz insisted that the regressive hypnosis sessions be conducted inside Benowitz's car, which for the occasion had its windows covered with a thick aluminium sheet to avoid interference from extraterrestrial entities. During the session, the woman reported remembering the moment when one of the cattle from the surrounding farms was sucked into a tractor beam by a spaceship, which later also happened to her and her son. In subsequent hypnosis sessions, Myrna reported increasingly shocking details about her abduction. The skepticism of Benowitz's colleagues began to waver. Perhaps the theory regarding the base could be correct. Myrna remembered being taken to a dungeon where there were large tanks where human and animal body parts floated in a viscous liquid. From this, the tale developed further. The woman spoke of hybrid beings, half men and half alien, who resided inside these large tanks, as if someone were trying to carry out biogenetic experiments with an extremely advanced technique. The alleged accounts accumulated in these sessions of regression later formed the very foundations for the legend of the Secret Base of Dulce. The curiosity that arose from the woman's stories led Benowitz to travel several times to the town and to the Archuleta Mesa mountains, even flying over the plateau with his private plane, taking countless photographs. In these flights, the Phoenix businessman said he had found irrefutable evidence of the existence of large caves meticulously dug into the rock, even if they were not connected in any way to roads that could be travelled by wheeled vehicles. However, these photos were never made public, and this fact, added to the man's extraordinary claims, only served to further discredit the truthfulness of the existence of the bases, rather than confirm it. Benowitz was so sure that the government was hiding something down there that in 1981 he wrote a letter to Senator Pete Domenici, speaking for the first time about an alleged war between aliens and the military, now known as the Dulce War. Here is the transcript of the letter. To date, as noted, I have not heard from you, and therefore will assume with all your new duties that you are very busy and just have not had the time. The facts I gave Captain Harris are simple and straightforward, as follows. 1. I knew the location of the alien bases in northern New Mexico, in the center of the Jicarilla Apache Reservation, 4.5 miles northwest of Dulce, New Mexico. 2. I know that someone in the military made a deal with the aliens several years ago, giving the Indian land, cattle, etc. and apparent assurance of safety to the alien, in trade for technology in the form of an atomic-powered ship, at the same time establishing an extensive US base alongside to test the ship. 3. That sometime late 79 or 1st of 80, an argument ensued over weapons, and the military abandoned. The final circumstance of the men, unknown. 4. That I had very high-resolution official NASA U-2 color infrared photos, in addition to low-level and ground photos, showing the base in total detail, photos obtained legitimately through UNM, the University of New Mexico. 5. The ship design traded for is over 30 years behind the alien technology. 6. I advised Captain Harris I knew of the 2 women and child near Austin, Texas, who were severely exposed to radiation at close distance from the ship in trouble, and that it was seen to come west with unmarked helicopters, and that the government was quietly paying their hospital expenses. I am also very concerned that the President has not been totally advised of the situation, and have forwarded a copy to him. Cover letter enclosed for your record. It is hoped you will value this valuable input and in time get in touch with me. Shortly after making this letter public, Paul Benowitz left the scene due to health problems. His family reports that the businessman suffered a severe nervous breakdown, and in 1988, following the worsening of his conditions, he was hospitalized in a psychiatry ward. Over time, many scholars and journalists took this story as mere sensationalist nonsense, and in any case, regarding the alleged kidnapping of Myrna Hansen and her enormous oddities, only the words of Valdez's son were taken into consideration, who was interviewed a few years later about what happened, stating the following. It is a possibility that the Myrna Hansen story was also part of the disinformation campaign. I will go out on a limb here and say that the story of Myrna Hansen was probably a well-orchestrated hoax because of a very important fact: the listening devices found in my dad's house. The government heard all the conversations on the phone between my dad and Benowitz, so such a hoax would be relatively easy to accomplish. Myrna Hansen came into the picture in May of 1980, and the Air Force did not even acknowledge contact with Paul until November of 1980. Although this evidence can barely be viewed as even circumstantial, it would explain a lot of things and how and why they transpired during the 1980s, based on what we currently know. Also, thanks to this information, interest in the secret base of Dulce slowly faded away, at least until the mid-90s, when 2 characters came forward talking in first person about what they had seen inside the secret complex. The first to go public was Thomas Costello, a former employee of the U.S. Air Force. Costello said he was a photographer at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, before being transferred to the Dulce Air Force Base in early 1970, where he was assigned to manage the enormous surveillance system of the underground structure. In the interviews Thomas released, he claimed that the base had been built by the Army, but that both humans and extraterrestrial life forms operated inside of it. The structure, made up of 7 levels, would have off-limit areas in the lower floors, where the military is strictly prohibited from descending. Down there, the extraterrestrial creatures would conduct genetic experiments on human and animal guinea pigs, with the aim of giving life to hybrid creatures. A real hell on earth that the United States government knew existed, but was unable to stop. All of this would have explained the massive amount of cattle mutilations and the high number of disappearances that occurred over the years in New Mexico. Costello would also have repeatedly spoken of large underground tunnels that served to connect other super-secret underground bases managed by aliens and humans, that extended like a spider's web over the entire territory of the United States of America. But this represents only the tip of the iceberg of the former soldier's testimony. To understand it even better and weigh up his difficult words, we rely on a small excerpt from an interview that reveals the functioning of the structure and tells of the organs that operate within it. I heard Dulce was started in 1937-38 by the Army engineers. Enlarged over the years, most recent work was completed 1965-66 to connect tunnels to the Page Base, site of one of the older underground facilities. The Four Corners base is called Perica. Most of the Native Americans, the Indians, living in that area are aware of that base and could tell us about the underground life forms that frequently are spotted near those communities. According to several senior maintenance workers, part of it was blasted by nuclear devices in the 60s. There are sections, like the shuttle tunnels, that were formed by an advanced tunneling machine that leaves the tunnel walls smooth. The finished walls in those tubes resemble polished black glass. Nature started the caverns. The Draco, reptilian humanoids, used the caverns and tunnels for centuries. Later, through Rand Corporation plans, it was enlarged repeatedly. The original caverns included ice caves and sulfur springs that the aliens found perfect for their needs. The Dulce caverns rival the Carlsbad caverns in size, among the largest and deepest in the world, with several leads that remain to be explored by professional speleonauts. Some reptoids are native to this planet. The ruling caste of aliens are reptilian. The beige or white beings are called the Draco. Other reptilian beings are green and some are brown. They were an ancient race on Earth, living underground. It may have been one of the draconian beings that tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden. Reptoids rightly consider themselves native Terrans. Perhaps they are the ones we call the fallen angels. The Greys work for and are controlled by the Draco. There are other grey-skinned beings that are not in league with the Draco. Since I was the senior security technician at that base, I had to communicate with them on a daily basis. If there were any problems that involved security or video cameras, I was the one they called. It was the reptilian working caste that usually did the physical labour in the lower levels at Dulce. Decisions involving that caste were usually made by the White Draco. When human workers caused problems for the working caste, the reptoids went to the White Draconian boss and the Draco called me. At times, it felt like it was a never-ending problem. When needed, intervention became a vital tool. The biggest problem were human workers who foolishly wandered around near the off-limits areas of the alien section. I guess it's human nature to be curious and to wonder what is past the barriers. Too often, someone found a way to bypass the barriers and nosed around. The cameras near the entrance usually stopped them before they got themselves in serious trouble. A few times, I had to formally request the return of a human worker. All secret bases are connected by tunnels that cross the world like underground highways, and there are two types of highways. For trucks, cars and buses, there are paved roads, and this is for limited travel. There is another style of transit for freight and for passengers that is for rapid travel. That worldwide network is called the sub-global system. It has checkpoints at each country entry. There are shuttle tubes that shoot the trains at incredible speeds using a maglev and vacuum method. They travel at a speed that excels the speed of sound. Frequently, the entrances are camouflaged as sand quarries or mining operations. Other complex portals are found on military bases. New Mexico and Arizona have the largest amounts of entrances, followed by California, Montana, Idaho, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Kansas, Arkansas, and Missouri. Of all the states, Florida and North Dakota have the least amount of entrances. Wyoming has a road that opens directly into the subterranean freeway. The road is no longer in use, but could be reactivated if they decide to do so, with minimal cost. It's located near Brooks Lake. The worker caste does the daily chores, mopping the latex floors, cleaning the cages, bringing food to the hungry people. It is their job to formulate the proper mixture for the beings that the Draco race has created. Basically speaking, the reptilian races are active at all levels of the Dulce base. There are several different races of aliens that work on the east section of level 6. That section is commonly called the alien section. The Draco are the undisputed masters of the 5th, 6th and 7th levels. The humans are second in command of those levels. I had to argue with one large draconian boss frequently. His name is difficult to verbalize. Kashilfast. I usually called him Kash, and he hated it. The draconian leaders are very formal when talking to the human race. These ancient beings consider us a lower race. Kash called me Leader Castello, but it was used in a sarcastical way. However, the worker caste is friendly enough, as long as you allow them to speak first. They are very cautious beings and consider most humans to be hostile. They always seemed surprised when they found many of the humans were open and trustworthy. There is no fraternizing with the aliens off hours. It is forbidden to speak to any alien race in the halls or an elevator without a clear, business-oriented reason. Humans can talk to humans, and aliens can speak to aliens, but that's as far as it goes. At the work site, however, it's different. There is free speech in the labs. There are several things you should know about Dulce. I took an oath under the penalty of death that no matter what I saw or heard, I would never divulge the information. Also, I signed a waiver that states I would willingly give up my life if I was found guilty of treason. At the Dulce Base, treason is anything that mentions the details of daily operations at this facility. When I first arrived, an absolute need-to-know policy was in effect. The story the honchos told us was that this is a tri-biotransfer facility with advanced technology, which is a fancy way of saying they do really risky things with human life just to see what would happen. If a medical cure happens, it will be heralded on the surface of the earth as a marvelous new cure, saying it was found after years of research at some well-known medical lab. The real story of the cure is never explained. After all, the Dulce Base is a secret facility. These people are very good at what they do. They do not tell the truth about the unfortunate people that end up in Nightmare Hall. I worked with aliens. With that in mind, you should get the idea of the secrecy and the security at that place. Yes, I know this was not the usual hospital-type job site, but in the beginning I bought the whole package. I was reminded daily by intercom in the elevators that this site does high-risk advanced medical and drug testing to cure insanity. Please, never speak to the inmates. It can destroy years of work. I'm sensible. When doctors say don't speak to them, who was I to destroy the delicate situation? But one man somehow caught my eye. He repeatedly stated that he was George S. and that he had been kidnapped and he was sure someone was searching for him. I don't know why he sticks in my mind. I found I was remembering his face, thinking he sure didn't look or sound insane. I convinced a friend of mine, a cop, to run a check on the guy, saying I had a run-in with him and was curious. I didn't mention the base at all. It was a sickening feeling when the computer confirmed that George S. was missing. What's worse, the cops thought he was just another guy that got tired of the daily grind and split. That was the beginning. Am I the one that blew the whistle? No. The next Monday, I searched for George, but he was gone. There were no records that explained what happened to him. It was another security officer that came to me, saying he and some lab workers wanted an off-duty meeting with me. Curiosity took over, and I said okay. That night, about 9 men showed up. They said they knew they were risking me turning them in, but they wanted to show me some things they thought I should see. One by one, they showed me records that proved many inmates were missing people. There were newspaper clippings and even photos that they had somehow smuggled into the base. I could see the fear in their faces as they spoke. One man stated he would rather lose his life by trying than to lose his soul by not doing anything at all. I told them about George and the things I found out about him. After a few hours, we pledged to attempt to expose the Dulce Base. This is an excerpt from the only interview present with Thomas Costello. The following year, the man disappeared into thin air, and his name did not appear in any other article or document. In addition to these words, no other tangible evidence was reported to ascertain the veracity of the claims, so much so that many today believe that the figure of Thomas Costello was part of a hoax, artfully created to fuel speculation about the theories. In any case, beings like the Draco, capable of relating to humans, would seem to share a certain resemblance to the reptilian aliens featured in the TV series Visitors, which in those years was very popular throughout the country, and which may have served as the basis for shaping Costello's tales. Soon, however, another man would enter the scene, bringing with him equally intricate and sinister theories. We are obviously talking about Phil Schneider. In 1995, Philip Schneider, a geologist who claimed, just like Thomas Costello, to have worked for the American defense inside the secret installation located in the subsoil of Archuleta Mesa, and to know the existence of another 129 secret underground bases present in underground locations of North America, decided to go public. During 1995, Schneider held countless conferences in various cities across the USA, recounting his direct experience in detail and warning those present of a great conspiracy that the federal government had been pursuing since 1954. The year in which, according to his words, then President Eisenhower allegedly entered into a collaboration pact with extraterrestrial entities, giving life to a hidden program to which Washington allocated approximately 25% of the nation's gross domestic product each year, what he called the Black Budget. This program served towards the development of high-tech weapons, research in medical technology, and the development of an intricate network of surveillance and control over citizens. Phil didn't have an easy life. He suffered from multiple problems, such as chronic back pain, osteoporosis, and multiple sclerosis. From time to time, he had to use crutches, body braces, leg braces, a urine bag, a catheter, diapers, and a wheelchair. He was missing 2 fingers on his left hand, and he had a scar running down from the top of his throat to just below his navel, and another scar ran from side to side under his ribs. Yet these enormous impediments did not stop him from carrying out his mission. Schneider used to begin his lectures by specifying how well he himself knew the danger looming over him and his family by exposing and disclosing this difficult information, and that many of his colleagues who intended to speak had been killed, their deaths being passed off as suicides. Nonetheless, he insisted that he loved his country too much to remain silent, and was willing to accept his fate, because in his heart he felt he had to tell the people what the military was doing. After this clarification, the man began to tell of his life and the different experiences gained over the years of service, even going as far as to speak of an alleged firefight between humans and aliens, which took place during the excavations in the subsoil of the Archuleta Mesa. Excavations which Schneider supervised, and in which he obtained all the scars on his body, and not only. Regarding the Dulce War, Schneider maintained that in August 1979, during the expansion of the base, the works had begun to suffer delays due to problems relating to the drilling of a layer of rock. The structure was excavated under the southwest corner of Archuleta Mesa, where the ground, from the studies carried out, was very easy to drill. But inexplicably, every time the drilling team attempted to go beyond a certain depth, they witnessed that the machinery shut down for no apparent reason. In an effort to find out what was standing in the way of the operation, Schneider and a Green Beret bodyguard decided to lower themselves into the drilling shaft by crane. They descended for a few dozens of meters until they reached a cave. They immediately noticed that this cave was not like the others, that is, of natural origin. The walls were strangely smooth. Schneider knew immediately that someone had excavated it earlier, but who that was entirely a mystery to him and his colleague. There was a bitter, unnatural stench in the air, as the drilling operation had allowed ancient gases to escape from the void below, along with a mysterious, sooty residue. It was at this point that a tall, slender, grey figure stepped out of the darkness, holding what appeared to be a weapon in its hands. Absolutely terrified by the supernatural and intimidating aspect of this creature, Schneider instinctively grabbed his rifle to shoot. The shots impacted against the creature, mortally wounding it. But the worst was not over, as without the slightest warning, 2 more aliens emerged from the darkness behind the 2 men. Backing up to the crane and firing wildly, Schneider again managed to hit one of the 2 greys, only for the other to use his weapon on him in retaliation. Schneider was instantly consumed by a mysterious blue light and felt a huge jolt of electricity explode through his body, knocking him unconscious to the ground. When he came to, he found himself in the arms of a couple of his companions. Dozens of Green Berets were arriving, who would soon launch a real firefight with the extraterrestrial entities inside the cave. Upon his return to the surface, Schneider was urgently examined by doctors, who found serious damage to both his left hand and foot. It was as if a very powerful bolt of lightning had pierced the man, burning him from the inside and forcing him to opt for an immediate amputation of the limbs. After this incident, Schneider claimed that he was removed from the secret project, but that he knew from reliable sources that despite the Dulce War, the expansion of the secret base continued unabated. As you will have understood, it is important to specify how Philipp Schneider is a very controversial witness. Many of his theories regarding the extraterrestrial conspiracy tend to exaggerate and were often contaminated by his personal, political and religious views. Finally, some of the information he shared with the public was later debunked, such as the story of his father, Otto Oskar Schneider, who according to Phil's stories would have been a German scientist and engineer who worked on the submarine technologies of the Reich during the Second World War, even becoming a captain of a U-boat submarine. However, according to the records of the California Birth Office, Otto Oskar was born in 1906 in the city of San Francisco and therefore could not have had any connection with Germany and consequently the U-boat program. Yet, to get back to understanding how Phil Schneider's testimonies are important for this case, but at the same time extremely difficult to take into consideration as irrefutable evidence, one needs to listen to one of his many lectures before rejecting most of his statements. Take for example the speech he gave in 1995 in Idaho, where in front of a packed audience the man explained perfectly who he was, what he had seen and what his values as a true patriot were. Here is Phil Schneider's speech. It is because of the horrendous structure of the federal government that I feel directly imperiled not to tell anybody about this material. How long I will be able to do this is anybody's guess. However, I would like to mention that this talk is going to be broken up into 4 main topics. Each of these topics will have some bearing on what you people are involved in, whether you are patriots or not. I want you to know that these United States are a beautiful place. I have gone to more than 70 countries, and I cannot remember any country that has the beauty as well as the magnificence of its people like these United States. To give you an overview of basically what I am, I started off and went through engineering school. Half of my school was in that field, and I built up a reputation for being a geological engineer, as well as a structural engineer with both military and aerospace applications. I have helped build 2 main bases in the United States that have some significance as far as what is called the New World Order. The first base is the one in Dulce, New Mexico. I was involved in 1979 in a firefight with alien humanoids, and I was one of the survivors. I'm probably the only talking survivor you will ever hear. 2 other survivors are under close guard. I am the only one left that knows the detailed files of the entire operation. 66 Secret Service agents, FBI and the like, died in that firefight. I was there. Number 1. Part of what I'm going to tell you is going to be very shocking. Part of what I'm going to tell you is probably going to be very unbelievable, though instead of putting your glasses on, I'm going to ask you to put your skepticals on. But please, feel free to do your own homework. I know the Freedom of Information Act isn't much to go on, but it's the best we've got. The local law library is a good place to look for congressional records. So if one continues to do their homework, then one can be standing vigilant in regard to their country. I love the country I am living in more than I love my life, but I would not be standing before you now, risking my life, if I did not believe it was so. The first part of this talk is going to concern deep underground military bases and the black budget. The black budget currently consumes $1.25 trillion per year. At least this amount is used in black programs, like those concerned with deep underground military bases. Presently, there are 129 deep underground military bases in the United States. They have been building these 129 bases day and night, unceasingly, since the early 1940s. Some of them were even built earlier than that. These bases are basically large cities underground, connected by high-speed magneto-leviton trains that have speeds up to Mach 2. Richard Suda, a PhD architect, has risked his life by talking about this. The average depth of these bases is over a mile, and they again are basically whole cities underground. They are all between 2.66 and 4.25 cubic miles in size. They have laser drilling machines that can drill a tunnel 7 miles long in one day. The black projects sidestep the authority of Congress, which, as we know, is illegal. Right now, the New World Order is depending on these bases. If I had known at the time, I would not have done it. I was lied to, rather extensively. For every calendar year that transpires, military technology increases about 44.5 years. This is why it is easy to understand that back in 1943 they were able to create, through the use of vacuum tube technology, a ship that could literally disappear from one place and appear in another place. My father, Otto Oskar Schneider, fought on both sides of the war. He was originally a U-boat captain and was captured and repatriated in the United States. He was involved with different kinds of concerns, such as the A-bomb, the H-bomb, and the Philadelphia experiment. He invented a high-speed camera that took pictures of the first atomic tests at Bikini Island on July 12, 1946. I have original photographs of that test, and the photos also show UFOs fleeing the bomb site at a high rate of speed. Bikini Island at the time was infested with them, especially under the water, and the natives had problems with their animals being mutilated, just like Dulce did in the 70s and 80s. At that time, General MacArthur felt that the next war would be with aliens from other worlds. Anyway, my father laid the groundwork with theoreticians about the Philadelphia experiment, as well as other experiments. What does that have to do with me? Nothing, other than the fact he was my father. I don't agree with what he did on the other side, but I think he had a lot of guts in coming here. He was hated in Germany. There was a $1 million reward, payable in gold, to anyone who killed him. Obviously, they didn't succeed. Anyway, back to our topic, deep underground bases. Back in 1954, under the Eisenhower administration, the federal government decided to circumvent the Constitution of the United States and form a treaty with alien entities. It was called the 1954 Greada Treaty, which basically made the agreement that the aliens involved could take a few cows and test their implanting techniques on a few human beings, but that they had to give details about the people involved. Slowly, the aliens altered the bargain until they decided they wouldn't abide by it at all. Back in 1979, this was the reality, and the firefight at Dulce occurred quite by accident. I was involved in building an addition to the deep underground military base at Dulce, which is probably the deepest base. It goes down 7 levels and over 2.5 miles deep. At that particular time, we had drilled 4 distinct holes in the desert, and we were going to link them together and blow out large sections at a time. My job was to go down the holes and check the rock samples and recommend the explosive to deal with the particular rock. As I was headed down there, we found ourselves amidst a large cavern that was full of outer space aliens, otherwise known as large greys. I shot 2 of them. At that time, there were 30 people down there. About 40 more came down after this started, and all of them got killed. We had surprised a whole underground base of existing aliens. Later, we found out that they had been living on our planet for a long time, perhaps 1 million years. This could explain a lot of what is behind the theory of ancient astronauts. Anyway, I got shot in the chest with one of their weapons, which was a box on their body that blew a hole in me and gave me a nasty dose of cobalt radiation. I have had cancer because of that. I didn't get really interested in UFO technology until I started work at Area 51, north of Las Vegas. After about 2 years recuperating after the 1979 incident, I went back to work for Morrison and Knudsen and other companies. At Area 51, they were testing all kinds of peculiar spacecraft. How many people here are familiar with Bob Lazar's story? He was a physicist working at Area 51 trying to decipher the propulsion factor in some of these craft. Now, I am very worried about the activity of the federal government. They have lied to the public, stonewalled senators, and have refused to tell the truth in regard to alien matters. I can go on and on. I can tell you that I am rather disgruntled. Recently, I knew someone who lived near where I live in Portland, Oregon. He worked at Gunderson Steel Fabrication, where they make railroad cars. Now, I knew this fellow for the better part of 30 years, and he was kind of a quiet type. He came in to see me one day, excited, and he told me, "They're building prisoner cars." He was nervous. Gunderson, he said, had a contract with the federal government to build 107,200 full-length railroad cars, each with 143 pairs of shackles. There are 11 subcontractors in this giant project. Supposedly, Gunderson got over $2 billion for the contract. Other steel outfits are involved. He showed me one of the cars in the rail yards in North Portland. He was right. If you multiply 107,200 times 143 times 11, you come up with about 15 million. This is probably the number of people who disagree with the federal government. No more can you vote any of these people out of office. Our present structure of government is technocracy, not democracy, and it is a form of feudalism. It has nothing to do with the Republic of the United States. These people are godless, and have legislated out prayer in public schools. You can get fined up to $100,000 and 2 years in prison for praying in school. I believe we can do better. I also believe that the federal government is running the gambit of enslaving the people of the United States. I am not a very good speaker, but I'll keep shooting my mouth off until somebody puts a bullet in me, because it's worth it to talk to a group like this about these atrocities. Still, 68% of the military budget is directly or indirectly affected by the black budget. Star Wars relies heavily upon stealth weaponry. By the way, none of the stealth program would have been available if we had not taken apart crashed alien discs. Some of you might ask what the space shuttle is shuttling. Large ingots of special metals that are milled in space and cannot be produced on the surface of the Earth. They need the near vacuum of outer space to produce them. We are not even being told anything close to the truth. I believe our government officials have sold us down the drain, lock, stock and barrel. Up until several weeks ago, I was employed by the US government with a Rhyolite 38 clearance factor, one of the highest in the world. I believe the Star Wars program is there solely to act as a buffer to prevent alien attack. It has nothing to do with the Cold War, which was only a toy to garner money from all the people. For what? The whole lie was planned and executed for the last 75 years. There are over 64,000 black helicopters in the United States. For every hour that goes by, there is one being built. Is this the proper use of our money? What does the federal government need 64,000 tactical helicopters for if they are not trying to enslave us? I doubt if the entire military needs 64,000 worldwide. I doubt if all the world needs that many. There are 157 F-117A stealth aircraft loaded with LIDAR and computer-enhanced imaging radar. They can see you walking from room to room when they fly over your house. They see objects in the house from the air with a variation limit of 1 inch to 30,000 miles. That's how accurate that is. Now, I worked in the federal government for a long time, and I know exactly how they handle their business. The federal government has now invented an earthquake device. I am a geologist, and I know what I'm talking about. With the Kobe earthquake in Japan, there was no pulse wave as in a normal earthquake. None. In 1989, there was an earthquake in San Francisco. There was no pulse wave with that one either. It is a Tesla device that is being used for evil purposes. The black budget programs have subverted science as we know it. Look at AIDS, invented by the National Ordnance Laboratory in Chicago, Illinois in 1972. It was a biological weapon to be used against the people of the United States. The reason I know this is that I have seen the documentation by the Office of Strategic Services, which by the way is still in operation to this day, through the CDC in Atlanta. They used the glandular excretions of animals, humans and alien humanoids to create the virus. These alien humanoids the government is hobnobbing with are the worst news. There is absolutely no defense against their germs. None. They are a biological weapon of terrible consequence. Every alien on the planet needs to be isolated. Saddam Hussein killed 3.5 million Kurdish people with a similar biological weapon. Do we, the people of this planet, deserve this? No, we don't, but we are not doing anything about it. Every moment we waste, we are doing other people on the planet a disservice. Right now, I am dying of cancer that I contracted because of my work for the federal government. I might live 6 months. I might not. I will tell you one thing. If I keep speaking out like I am, maybe God will give me the life to talk my head off. I will break every law that it takes to talk my head off. 11 of my best friends in the last 22 years have been murdered. 8 of the murders were called suicides. Before I went to talk in Las Vegas, I drove a friend down to Joshua Tree, near 29 Palms. I drove into the mountains in order to get to Needles, California, and I was followed by 2 government vans, each with a couple of occupants, one of which had an Uzi. I knew exactly who they were. I have spoken 19 times and have probably reached 45,000 people. Well, I got ahead of them and came to a stop in the middle of the road. They both went on either side of me and down a ravine. I cut up my security card and sent it back to the government and told them if I was threatened, and I have been, that I was going to upload 140,000 pages of documentation to the internet about government structure and the whole plan. I have already begun that task. In Phil Schneider's speech, there is truly an impressive amount of information. It goes from conspiracy theories to the New World Order, from the Black Budget to the Philadelphia experiment, all in a dizzying succession of conjectures and declarations, which make it very difficult to understand what the government's motivations were, but above all, why extraterrestrial entities are carrying out such an operation on our planet. So, once again, the massive theories brought forward, without however having any confirmation of concrete and tangible evidence, make the stories that gravitate around the village of Dulce and Archuleta Mesa difficult to accept. Nonetheless, Phil was destined to become a real symbol for theorists, ufologists and conspiracy theorists. He was in life and remained so after his death, which occurred less than a year after giving his speech in Idaho. On January the 17th, 1996, Phil Schneider was found dead at his home in Wilsonville, Oregon. The official cause of death was ruled as suicide, although, according to some reports, there were signs of torture on his body. Many of his supporters believe that US intelligence representatives simply removed Schneider because he knew too much, a theory that even Schneider had predicted several times in his speeches. Furthermore, rumors refer to an alleged police report according to which Schneider was shot dead by some agents who showed up at his address to deal with a large number of unpaid taxes and fines. During the interview with the agents, Phil allegedly began to act in a threatening way, eventually grabbing a weapon and pointing it at them. The policeman, feeling in danger, had no choice but to fire first, mortally wounding Schneider. Whatever happened, at the time of his death, the man was in very poor health. Mystery surrounds Phil Schneider's death, and no one can know for sure if those incredible stories were truthful to reality or just simple inventions of his mind. Although the man never contradicted himself in his speeches and remained faithful to a single version of history, many scholars have shown that his reports were marred by exaggerations and inaccuracies. Such as when he claimed that the first attack on the World Trade Center involved the use of tactical nuclear weapons, which was denied. At the same time, however, his supporters believe that he has provided enough evidence to prove his honesty, one of which would be the scars on his body, while the objective inconsistencies in Phil's stories are simply explained by stating that the US government rewrote the history of the Schneider family to undermine Phil's credibility and make him a liar in the eyes of the media. This is the last piece of the story. As often happens, the mystery has never been revealed. And today, the Dulce underground base has turned into a scary camping tale, exactly like the legends that 100 years earlier the population of Archuleta handed down from father to son. However, there are the last 3 reports that need to be taken into account, and which can, in part, explain how this mythical secret base became a cult, inflaming the debate on the extraterrestrial danger. The story rapidly spread within the UFO community, and in 1987, ufologist John Lear claimed to have independent confirmation of the base's existence. In 1988, the tabloid Weekly World News ran an article entitled UFO Base Found in New Mexico. It claimed that evil invaders from another solar system have established a secret underground base in the rugged mountains of northern New Mexico, so to be able to trade human guinea pigs for bizarre genetic experiments. The Weekly World News article used alleged quotes from Leonard H. Stringfield, a ufologist, as a source for its claims. Upon learning of the story, Stringfield protested, "I have never read such a distortion of fact in my life." Political scientist Michael Barkan, Professor Emeritus of Political Science at Syracuse University's Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs, wrote that Cold War underground missile installations in the region gave the rumors superficial plausibility, making the Dulce Base story an attractive legend within the UFO world. According to Barkan, the claims of abductee experiments and firefights between extraterrestrials and the Delta Force place the Dulce legend a far cry from the wilder reports of secret underground bases. Finally, the residents of Dulce claim to have seen UFOs, moving lights, and other inexplicable activities in the area, which, however, over the years has transformed from an area with few economic possibilities to a tourist destination for mystery enthusiasts. Also proof of this are the words of Ty Vicente, president of the Legislative Council of the Icarijas, a group of Apaches living in the southwestern United States. He said he adopted the notion of the Dulce Base to stimulate tourism to the area, and in fact in 2016 the city hosted the Dulce Base UFO conference at the local casino hotel. Therefore, no one can say with certainty whether the Archuleta Mesa holds the greatest secret in the history of humanity in its subsoil. Everyone is free to believe what they want. What is certain, however, is that this case, with all its oddities, will remain for a long time a point of reference for lovers of conspiracy theories, and an excellent source to base a science fiction film on.